I'm pregnant and contemplating an abortion. What should I do? Hi, welcome to today's little lesson. Thank you so very much for joining me once again. Over our last two little lessons, we've been discussing the issue of abortion. And so I thought it would be good to take one little lesson and speak directly to women who find themselves with an unwanted pregnancy and are contemplating an abortion and giving my best advice. And so that's what I'm about to attempt to do. First of all, let me say how much I sympathize with any woman who finds herself in such a predicament. Of course, we know that everybody knows, it's undeniable, that pregnancy is a trial, particularly, in the final months of that time. My wife and I have had 3 kids, and boy, my heart has gone out to my wife during all 3 pregnancies, and not to mention the delivery of the baby. Now, my wife had wonderful experiences by comparison to so many women because her labor and deliveries were so quick. But that's not always the case, as we all know. And God bless women for bearing children. It is not the easiest thing in the world. And I've often thought to myself that men who get women pregnant, particularly men who get women pregnant out of wedlock, as a part of their fair recompense, they ought to duct tape bowling balls to the stomachs of those men for about 3 or 4 months, just to give them a small, understanding of what they're putting this woman through. And then, of course, the labor and delivery is just kind of a precursor to what is to come after that baby's born. Yeah, they're cute, and they're bring a lot of joy, but that's the beginning of years and years of responsibility and devotion to that child. And so many women have used those undeniable facts as justification to get an abortion, which is worse, to get an abortion and terminate this pregnancy, or to go through all that. Ramifications which will, go on for years and years and years, and even go so far as to say that this was the right thing to do, or the loving thing to do. And I can actually understand to a degree how a woman could come up with that kind of justification, having been guilty of coming up with justifications myself, not ever for an abortion, but for things that, deep within your heart, are wrong, but you're facing a very difficult decision. So I'm just starting off by saying great amount of sympathy. Any woman who's considering an abortion, is not anyone, but most women are finding themselves in a difficult situation, very difficult situation. Not one that I'm going to say, though, justifies getting an abortion. In any case, my advice then is to take responsibility for what has happened. Now, we as human beings are so apt to want to find somebody else to blame for our troubles. And legitimately, many times there are other people to blame. But we're very apt to take no responsibility or blame for the consequences of our wrong decisions. And so, yeah, there was a guy involved. Let's say that you're pregnant out of wedlock. There was a guy involved, and so he bears part of the responsibility. It's not just all your fault. But yet, you were likely, unless you were raped, a willing participant, and you also made a a poor decision. Fundamentally, the decision that you made that was wrong is that you gave your body to a man who didn't deserve it. You don't want to give your body, to any man who isn't already committed to you till death do us part in a lifetime covenant of marriage. And the fact that, again, if you're pregnant out of wedlock, now speaking to those dear women, pregnant out of wedlock, that was the fundamental mistake that you made. And again, he's to blame. He also shouldn't be expecting any woman to give him her body to whom he is not committed in a lifelong covenant of marriage. Why? Well, there's so many obvious reasons, but one of which, of course, is that, well, you're experiencing it. You're pregnant, and that has ramifications for the rest of your life. Go through with having that baby, then you have responsibility to raise that child and so forth, and huge ramifications. And so that is why God has so clearly said that fornication, that is sex outside of marriage, is wrong. It's immoral. Because God loves us. He doesn't want us facing these predicaments and these less than best situations in our lives where we actually have to contemplate terminating a pregnancy. God doesn't want you to face that. And so own up to this, okay? Just make a decision. I'm smarter now. I'm wiser now. And I'm not going to give any man my body who isn't committed in a lifelong covenant. And that, of course, that doesn't guarantee that, it will be a lifelong thing, because a lot of people get married and wind up divorced. But, the person who's unwilling to even get married, there's something wrong there, right? If they want your body, but they don't want to marry you. Stay far away. And then if you do find a guy who's willing to marry you, again, that eliminates some of the risk, but not all the risk. And so I could give a couple of lessons on, how to know if you can trust these guys who are willing to marry you, but who might bail out later on down the road. Okay. So again, this is a little lesson, not a long lesson. I would never encourage you to terminate your pregnancy, because that's just a nice way of saying killing the life of another person who's within you. And if you watch my previous 2 little lessons on abortion, and as we went through the logic of why abortion is wrong and immoral, then, I'm just reaffirming that. That's a horrible choice, and it's not one that ends your problem. Then you have to live with the consequences of the knowledge of what you did for the rest of your life. You're a participant in the murder of your own child. Okay. And that's not, according to the Bible, that's not just something that you'll deal with the rest of your life. It's something that you could deal with after your life is over, when you stand before God and give an account for your life. Okay, so this is serious stuff. So take responsibility, and then you have to, so don't terminate your pregnancy. Keep your child. Bring your child to full term. Let it be born. And then you have to make a decision whether or not, what's the right thing to do at that point in time. And for many women, the right decision would be to put their child up for adoption, because there are thousands and thousands of married couples who would love to have children but can't for some biological reason. And they would love to raise your child. And I get it, heartbreaking thing for a mother then to give up a child. There's an instinctive desire to take responsibility. This is my child, and to raise this child myself. So that's a very hard decision. But again, you've put yourself in a place where you're having to make these hard decisions. So just face up to it. That's a great sign of personal growth and maturity when you can take responsibility and set off on a new course. Now, in my next lesson, I'm going to talk about some even more fundamental things that are really the root stuff in all of this that will solve not just this problem, but if you can fix that, you can solve a lot of problems. Okay, all right. And now, if you're pregnant in wedlock and you have an unwanted pregnancy, same advice. You're married, you're having a child, keep your child, and you would have the option of putting your child up for adoption as a brand new baby, as you and your husband would make a decision on that if it's so difficult for you, but I think you'd want to keep that child and raise that child and enjoy all the blessings of raising a child. Okay, so don't miss the next little lesson, because I actually have more to say that's even more important and more fundamental. All right, so thanks so much for joining me on this one. Hope to see you next time. God bless you.